Here's the breaking news tonight. A federal judge ruling that Paul Manafort intentionally lied to the FBI, Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and a grand jury in the ongoing Russia investigation. I want to bring in now Matthew Rosenberg, attorney Midwin Charles, and Max Booth, the author of The Corrosion of Conservatism, Why I Left the Right. So good to have you here. Welcome. These guys have been here before. They're used to this, but thank you. Matthew, as the journalist for the Times here, I've got to start with you. The judge ruled that Manafort intentionally lied to the FBI about his interactions with Kalimnik, the Russian shared polling data, the Russian he shared polling data with, and he lied about his $125,000 that he received for legal bills. Two topics that were, quote, material to the investigation. And he lied about another criminal investigation. What can we deduce from Mueller's case about all of these lies? Like, what's going on?
Well, we know there's another criminal investigation we don't know about. That much we've got. I mean, look, it really looks like they're looking at some kind of collusion, conspiracy, whatever you want to call it, between people, I mean, we know that, between people from Trump's campaign and the Russians. I mean, you have to wonder, why is Manafort lying here? Is he really the kind of moron who cuts a plea deal with federal prosecutors and then keeps lying to them? Or is there something else he's worried about? Is, you know, the fact that he was in bed for many years with very questionable Russian oligarchs, some of whom are more than reputed to have mafia ties and other kind of Russian intelligence ties. And he's lying to kind of cover up his interactions with them. It certainly leads one to speculate. It looks like, you know, he's afraid of something there.
So then a good question is, because, you know, what Chris and I were talking about just moments ago, Chris's whole closing argument was, why lie, why lie? But as we all remember, for everyone who's here, can it just be, I don't know as it deals with the Russian investigation, if I'm looking at another reason, could it just be that they're grifters? Could it just be that they're grifting? Because I remember during the campaign, a lot of folks who came on and they were defending the president, they were in Russia all the time. I was like, what are you doing in Russia? I got a speaking engagement, I got to do this, I got to do that. Was it just where the money was coming from? They didn't want to report it, and they...
I mean, look, Don, there's a lot of grifters out there. There's different kinds of grifts, and all the grifting in connection with the Trump campaign seems to be tied up to Russia. I mean, that to me is pretty suspicious. You have over 100 contacts.
It could be that's where the money is, though. No,
there's money in other places, too. And by the way, they're also investigating Trump links to Saudi Arabia and the Emirates and other places. But there's over 100 contacts between the Trump campaign and the Russians. And you've already had 4 Trump campaign officials who have been convicted of lying about those contacts. Not only Manafort, but also Flynn, Cohen, and Papadopoulos. Don't tell me that they're doing it just because, you know, it's inconvenient to tell the truth. There has to be a real reason why they're trying to hide what actually went on.
Exactly. I mean,
hold on. Let me just say this. And if you're making money from Russia and you don't want people to know about it, the judgment of the sentence for that is a lot less than lying to prosecutors. Go on.
Exactly. But this is also an attorney's worst nightmare, right? To have your client lied to a judge, to have your client lied to a grand jury. And what I think I find most surprising about this is Manafort and all these other people who have pled guilty for lying, they aren't lying to, you know, the guy on the corner or their cousin or their aunt. They are lying to authority.
Right.
They are lying to a judge. They are lying to a grand jury. So you have to, you know, always sort of ask yourself, who do these people think they are? That's one. And two, to your point, why lie? I mean, this is pretty significant. This is a really, really important investigation. Why would you lie to someone with such authority who could dictate where you spend the rest of your life wearing an orange jumpsuit?
But the judge, I want to ask you about this. Judge Amy Berman Jackson said that Manafort didn't meet the threshold, if we can put up the full screen, didn't meet the threshold on 2 other things, his interactions with the White House officials and about Kalimnik's role to try and influence witnesses. What does it say about the special counsel that he didn't meet that? Is that a normal part of an investigation and prosecution, not meeting certain criteria?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's always criteria that you have to meet in order to prove whatever allegation it is that you are trying to show to the judge. And if you aren't able to do it, you aren't able to do it. It's a threshold. And so if you can't meet that threshold, you can't convince the judge of what it is that you're trying to convince the judge.
So should they read anything into that is what I'm asking.
I don't really know on that one.
Let's hone in on Manafort lying about his interactions with Kalimnik. Again, Manafort was a campaign chairman, right? And Kalimnik is a Russian associate who shared campaign polling data with. He shared polling data with. Why lie about that? Who is he protecting?
Well, he's tied to Russian intelligence, too. Isn't Kalimnik?
Yes.
He's got ties to Russian intel. He's got ties to Oleg Deripaska, who's an incredibly powerful oligarch. you know, people who've crossed Russian intelligence some of them have ended quite badly.
Right.
You know, so in this case, you know, we're certainly going to think, well, maybe he's lying to protect himself. Maybe he's worried that in prison he's not safe. We don't know. Maybe he's just a grifter. Maybe he's just used to lying at this point. Yeah. It's not out of the realm of possibility either.
Except
but it is
that's not a reasonable thing to do, right?
No, I think
you could be a grifter, but you could understand what the ramifications and the consequences are to lying to a federal judge or to a grand jury.
Yeah, you can always end up paying money for your taxes for the money that you earned and then you didn't report.
I mean, I think there's only two reasonable explanations for why Manafort is lying, knowing that by lying he's potentially going to spend the rest of his life behind bars. Explanation A, he expects that President Trump is going to pardon him. And explanation B is he thinks that it's better to spend the rest of his life behind bars than to face the wrath of his former Russian business associates who have a way of settling these things with polonium-laced tea. Either way, it doesn't speak well to the Trump campaign. And I would just point out also that last week in court, the Muller team was talking about the meeting that Manafort had with Kilimnik, this associate of Russian intelligence, in New York in August of 2016, where they were talking about a peace deal for Ukraine, which was widely seen as kind of a quid pro quo for the Russian support for Trump in the campaign. And the Mueller team was saying this goes to the very heart of their investigation. So I would push back against kind of the emerging conventional wisdom. There is no collusion. To me, it looks like there is collusion with the Trump campaign. I think the issue is, can you prove there was collusion with Trump personally?
Does it touch the president? Can I move on now, because this is very important. I want to get you guys to weigh in on this. I want to talk about William Barr, because William Barr is consulting with top Justice Department officials on how to handle the anticipated Mueller report. The biggest question is how much of this information should be given to Congress. What happens if he doesn't release his full report?
I mean, look, I'm a reporter, so I'm like, we want it all.
Yes,
like, let it all out. And we overclassify.
You get it whether they release it.
I know, we're going to try anyway. But, you know, this country overclassifies everything. So, like, you know, but there's going to be a chunk of it that's going to be classified. It's based on intelligence. It's based on intercepts or human intelligence. They'll say you're going to reveal sources and methods. So some of that we're not going to see. I think it's, you know, there's a lot of pressure from Congress. Yeah. Those intel committees are definitely going to want to see a lot of it. Yeah. I can't imagine the Justice Department can say, well, nothing to see here, it's done, let's all move on.
Yeah, when I was reading the intro, I looked at you when Barr was in his confirmation hearing, when he didn't really answer the question about whether he's going to give a report. He stopped short of that. Right. Congress won't be happy if they don't get these answers. Do you think the American people will be happy?
And I think that's really the important question here is, what will the American people say? What will the American people do if this report is not released, at least in part? I understand that parts of it is going to be, you know, retracted or redacted rather, because it has highly intelligent information. But, you know, the American people need to have integrity. We have to maintain integrity in our justice system, and I think transparency is how we do that. So I think it's very important for people to know what happened. At the end of the day, we all want to know what happened. It's been about 2 years since Mueller's been doing this work, and as you said, there's been over 100 contacts with Russia. We have 37 people have been arrested. All these entities have been charged with sort of working with Russia. So we need to know what are the answers for the questions we've been asking for the last 2 years. And so if he doesn't release this report, I think there's going to be a huge backlash.
So, but it sounds like Barr doesn't want to do what Comey did and come out and say all the bad things that you know, someone did or didn't do.
No, I mean, that's a reasonable position to take, and I agree with many who said that you know, it was a mistake to talk about what Hillary may or may not have done if you weren't going to charge her. But remember, this is a different matter, because this is not a question of criminal prosecution. It's not just a criminal investigation. It's primarily a counterintelligence investigation. And the important point is, this is not just about charging people. This is about political accountability.
That's right.
High crimes and misdemeanors do not have to be actual violations of the law, and the public needs to know what the president and his aides were up to, regardless of whether they broke the law or not.
How do you weigh the public interest on this?
Well, I would think that justice...
Does that matter, what the public thinks? Maybe it should just come out because we've spent so much money and time, but go on.
Well, no, I imagine, yeah, the Justice Department is going to want something out there. That, you know, as you noted in the beginning of the show, on the far right, it's a witch hunt. On the far left, they found the greatest criminal conspiracy on the planet. The truth is neither. And the Justice Department is not going to want to leave people out there stewing and speculating. Facts are their friends in this case, so you think they would they would have an interest, and they're supposed to serve the public interest.
In fact, we're not necessarily Trump's friends, however.
Not necessarily.
But I'm saying from the top, I know this sounds terrible, but I mean, do you think they were even smart enough to collude? I mean,
we know that
I know, but I don't think that they're that smart to coordinate anything. I just think they were sort of bumbling.
I think they were dumb enough to do something and get caught red-handed.
Okay.
Exactly.
I mean,
because just
that's
about,
fair.
Because just
That's
about
fair.
everything up to date has been in plain sight,
including
the President of the United States intimidating witnesses in plain sight.
Let me play this because I want
Twitter.
to, before you guys go, I want to play this. This is a moment in a bar hearing where he talks about his relationship with Mueller and he tells the president about it. Watch this.
The president wanted to know, he said, oh, you know Bob Mueller. How well do you know Bob Mueller? And I told him how well I knew Bob Mueller and how, the Barrs and Muellers were good friends and would be good friends when this is all over and so forth. And he was interested in that, wanted to know, what I thought about, Mueller's integrity and so forth and so on. And I said, Bob is a straight shooter and should be dealt with as such.
Does their relationship factor into all of this?
Well, I'm sure it does. I don't think we know how exactly. I mean, it's kind of amusing that, Trump has gone on and on about how Comey and Mueller are supposedly best buds, whereas in fact, apparently they're not really friends. And it turns out that Barr and Mueller actually are friends, and it's not clear that Trump realized that because he obviously picked Barr because Barr sent in this memo very critical of Mueller. So surprise, they're actually friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how that's going to shake out. I would just hope that Barr does his duty and make sure that the American people get the relevant information they need to make an informed decision.
I hope so too, because when he was questioned by Senator Kamala Harris and asked whether or not he would recuse himself, at least if the ethics professionals deemed it necessary to do so, he said he wouldn't if he disagreed with that decision. So that's disconcerting.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we don't know if there's collusion, whatever you want to call it, but we know they were collusion.
There's no collusion.
Well, we know they were collusion curious at this point. They certainly were. So I think that, Barr and others in the Justice Department are going to want to, I would imagine, get something out there to explain their findings a bit rather than leaving the whole world speculating.
Well, they have to. I mean, actually, when you step back from all of this, the real issue here is whether or not another country helped elect the President of the United States right now. Is this president legitimate?
Oh, well.
You know what I'm saying? So we have to get those answers.
That's a good question. The first part about did they help, I think there is no doubt that they helped.
Right, and to what extent?
Yeah.
We need to know.
Is he legitimate?
We need to know.
Yeah.
Midwin Charles.
That is the question.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you all.
welcome.
It's a pleasure having you. Come back.
Absolutely.
These guys are always here.